Welcome to Getting and Staying in Touch with Your Students for the rest of the semester. This webinar was designed by University of Alaska Anchorage Academic Innovations and E-Learning and the Center for Advancing Faculty Excellence. The objectives include establishing a communications plan, identifying tools and techniques for communication, finding out the best way to maintain a supportive instructor presence for the rest of the semester, and also for student support referrals. Keep in mind that you know your students, so you're going to want to keep them always in mind as you adapt the approach you want to take for the rest of the semester. You always want to model a can-do attitude, stay positive, keep things simple. You don't have to make things complicated, but simple and consistent work well for students, and they want to know what to expect. This is a faculty self-assessment that you can take a quick look at, pause the video, see which of these things you have done and which you still would like to do. This will give you a good idea of where to proceed. We're going to talk about a communications plan and why. Well, that seems kind of obvious. Students need to know what's expected of them, what the plan is for the rest of the semester. And if you don't have it all planned out, that's fine. You can give it to them 1 week at a time. So the when is going to be probably recommended to have a specific communication method that you use the same day once a week, so maybe every Monday or every Tuesday or every Wednesday, maybe a day when you would typically meet with them in person. But in between that, you're going to also need to be present in your class every day in Blackboard. We're going to spend a lot more time on how, what, and who. So how will you communicate with your students? How will you reach them? This is a problem. If you haven't already established electronic communications with your students, sometimes the UA Online contact information is incorrect. So we're all trying to get students to go into UA Online and update their information. You may employ a survey or something like that to get alternative contact information for students. And how will your students stay informed? Well, a communications plan usually would include expectations of the students. You expect them to check their email every day or whatever your communications method is. And also some scheduled check-ins that could be via discussion board asynchronously or could be via online office hours through web conferencing, whatever works best for you and your students. And how will your students reach you? Well, the most important thing is under Contact Instructor in Blackboard, be sure that you have your contact information in there, whatever way you prefer to be contacted. Students can also benefit from a discussion board. The advantage is that they can see all of the questions and answers in one place. It saves you time from having to answer the same question via email multiple times. And in more private matters, you can tell students that it's okay to email you or contact you in some other way individually. How will you keep up with students' thoughts, ideas, and concerns? So if you are willing, you could follow our Chancellor's lead and have an Ask Me Anything discussion board or web conference. Regardless, just make sure your students know that you are open and you are both working towards the same goal and that you have an open line of communication. And just in case something may happen to mess up your communications plan or make it so that you're not available, what will be your backup plan? So one idea would be to add one of your colleagues to your Blackboard course. Another idea is under the Contact Instructor section of Blackboard, in addition to your own contact information, you can add a colleague, you can add a TA, you can add a librarian, you can add a dean or director, you can add the contact information for IT and for DSS. So there's a lot of things you could put under Contact Instructor that would be right there in the Blackboard shell for students to be able to find and maybe get answers if for whatever reason they are not hearing back from you. So now what will you communicate to students? Well, we have provided some things to you via email that you've seen coming out on some of the web pages. Cafe sent an email on the 24th with a sample message to students that you may want to adapt for your class. If you go to bit.ly, the link that you see here on the screen, so 39NDMHJ, you'll find a number of resources, including a vulnerability article. It's great to humanize yourself to students. Be yourself. It's okay to share frustrations as long as you try to keep it very positive. Students react well when they know that you are human and having some of the same thoughts and fears that they are. So let students know that you're open to hearing from them as well. Also, there is a UNC faculty adjusted syllabus. Maybe you've seen that on social media, but it includes some very useful thoughts that really what we're all thinking, and it's put into words. Some of the items include, nobody signed up for this, and the humane option is the best option. And we cannot just do the same thing online. And we will foster intellectual nourishment, social connection, and personal accommodation. And we will remain flexible and adjust to the situation. So this was shared by Brandon Bain from UNC, and it really sends a positive message to students. Our UAA DSS, Disability Support Services Statement, is something you can communicate to students. If you anticipate issues related to the format or requirements of this course, please contact me. I'd like to discuss ways to ensure your full participation in the course. So again, it's really important for students to know you're on their side. You're going to work together to be successful. There are other similar models you might have seen. Just letting the students know that we all are different. We know that. We're trying to find a way to finish out the semester and still meet the same learning objectives. And we hope that you will speak up if something is not working for you. All in all, messages to students should be brief, clear, and complete with a professional but approachable tone. Always good to invite a response from students and modeling the kind of communication that's appropriate in your field. When you're thinking about ways to communicate with students, we've already mentioned a number of possible tools, and your decision about what tools to use might include things like what tools you already use, you're comfortable with, maybe your students are comfortable with, what might be particularly appropriate for your students or your content area. What tools are most reliable? We're hearing a little bit now about some of the web conferencing tools becoming a little less reliable as everybody's jumping on them now. And so also consider support. So we are recommending tools that are already supported by UAA, and that means that students can call the call center and get help, and you don't have to support the technology. So consider these questions as you are determining simple and consistent ways to keep that communication line open with your students. So probably the top one is going to be a bang for your buck by 2 in 1. A Blackboard announcement has an option for you to check a box and also send it by email. And so that is going to be a very useful way, but make sure that you've told your students that they're expected to check their UAA email daily or whenever. Also, a Blackboard discussion board, for reasons we talked about already, is a good asynchronous place for Q&A, but also regular class discussions on other topics, or even a chance for students to talk amongst themselves in a small group. The discussion board is very flexible in Blackboard. So here are some other tools that you might consider. And again, you'll want to keep in mind your particular students as you choose these. We've touched on instructor presence before. This is extremely important when you do not have any face-to-face or any online synchronous sessions. The students need to know that you're there. And so how do you show them that you're there? Well, you respond to their questions quickly. Hopefully, like Quality Matters recommends, you have something on your syllabus or in Blackboard that lets them know you'll always return an email within 24, 48, whatever it is that you've said. And so make sure that you do stick with that. Make sure that you are a participant in Blackboard discussions, unless it's one of those ones that is intentionally for students to talk and it's been clear that you are not going to go into a particular one. And you can do that, as I said, in groups in Blackboard. But make sure that you are checking things in Blackboard daily. You can also consider scheduling online office hours. Okay, now for student support. Student support is, students really need to know they can rely on you, that they can trust you. So some tips for student support include making sure, again, that they know you're in this together. So instead of just saying, okay, here's what I expect you to do, you can also clearly indicate what it is that you're doing. And 1 week at a time, maybe sending out a message that's saying, here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do this week. And then, as I mentioned before, consider ways students might be able to help one another. So giving them study buddies or somehow putting them into support groups. Also, remember that we have a wealth of resources at UAA, and you can refer students to the Learning Commons. There is a student help and policies link in every one of our Blackboard courses that has tons of information. Students don't always know about it. Faculty don't always know about it. So click on it, take a look at it, and make sure your students know it's there. Also, we still have the care team. Determine if it's something that you can handle yourself. Determine if it's something you can find out about and get back to the student. And if not, then refer them to the care team and they will be able to take it from there. So, in conclusion, some of the takeaways from this workshop that we hope you are going to remember: establish a communications plan and stick to it. Think carefully about the tone of your communication. Maintain supportive instructor presence. Ask students for feedback on how things are going. And again, you can use many of those same tools for that, including some kind of anonymous survey with Qualtrics or Google Forms, or even Blackboard surveys. And then articulate appropriate options for student support referrals. So make sure that you know all of the resources that are out there for students so that you can share those with your students and help them to be successful. And lastly, once again, this bit.ly link will have a lot of other resources that you might find useful as you're getting in touch with and staying in touch with your students this semester.